Hey y'all, this is a slightly different video because, as I mentioned to you in my last video, I am in the process of moving to a new place. My apartment is rapidly breaking down into a sea of boxes, um, and so I've packed away my laptop stand, so the angle is different in this video. Everything is changing. Anyway, I'm not done packing yet, and I'm not moving for 2 more days. But of course, I'm deep in the getting ready phase of things. Anyway, my next video though will be from the new place. Hopefully that will go smoothly and quickly and all that. So there weren't a whole lot of questions this time, and so let's get right into them. I did, however, get lots of recommendations from you guys, and I appreciate that because I had asked for recommendations to kind of to deal with all the stress of moving and the end of the year drama and all that other stuff. And you guys came through fantastically. So there's really good stuff that I'm going to be checking out as soon as moving is done. Um, Anyway, all right, so let's get to the actual questions. Incidentally, for those of you that heard me sounding like death last month, I am better. My voice is not 100%. I don't sound quite like myself to myself. And I do still have a bit of a cough, but I'll take 95% instead of the 55 or so percent that I was last time we spoke. All right, so moving to the actual questions. First one is from Modi Lieberman, who asks, and an actual question on a related topic. How do you go about picking which books you want to review for your column in the Times? Presumably you are overflowing with suggestions and requests to get reviewed, so how do you pick those out? And how do you go about trying to find what you want to read in general? Well, going about trying to find what I want to read in general, I look for recommendations, as I did in the Patreon list. Anything that sounds interesting catches my attention, I go from there. Regarding the New York Times column, because I had to receive and start reading the books about 2 to 3 months before they were actually published, I couldn't rely on recommendations for those. So excuse me, and I could not rely simply on who sent me what, because yes, there were a lot of people that wanted to send me things. Times policy was that you had to send it to the New York Times Book Review, and most publishers do that anyway, especially for books that they think are of interest to the reviewers. Um, but first, for science fiction and fantasy, because we hadn't had a column there for a long time, I had to go around to publishers for a while and convince them to start sending things to the New York Times. Because a lot of science fiction and fantasy publishers had just stopped doing so after years of being ignored, and I can't blame them for that. So I had to go and let them know, hey, there's somebody there who's interested in this stuff now. I also put out the word to the degree that I could in indie communities, indie publisher and self-publishing groups. The catch was that the Times policy requires the book to be basically distributed on a mass level in major bookstores and so forth. Online only publications I couldn't review. Publications that basically weren't on librarian lists. If it was the kind of book that couldn't get published in a library, or couldn't be distributed through a library, then it probably wasn't something the Times would allow. Anyway, though, I would basically go through lists of forthcoming novels, break them down, sort them out. I had a little spreadsheet that I put together of author names, book name, description, type of book, fantasy, science fiction, horror, interstitial, whatever. Including some other characteristics that I was kind of trying to make sure that I was keeping an eye on, like gender and race. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't overbalancing and basically giving too much attention to one group or another. So I sorted all this stuff out, and then each period, because I was reading books every 6 weeks, I would pick 4 books, and then I'd send a list of the possibles to my editor at the Times, and say, hey, what about these? And then we'd go back and forth a little bit on them, and sometimes I'd have to swap out a book or something for some reason or another. Most frequent problem was that other reviewers at the Times wanted the books that I wanted to review, so I was like, come on, guys. Anyway, but that's fine. I suppose it's fine. That's okay. Anyway, so that was basically it. Once we agreed on a set of books, the people from the Times would either send me the review copies they already had, or they would contact the publishers and request review copies to send to me. I like to read books on my cell phone via an ebook form. So that actually made things a lot easier for me, was the fact that I didn't have to wait for things to be physically mailed. But it was fun. That was it. All right. So next question. I hope that answers all of your questions. Let's see. Next question. All right. Is from Kelly Mies. If I'm not mutilating your name, I think it's Mies or Mies. Now for a question. We're almost a year into 45. He who shall not be named. Trump. I don't play that game. Not a comment towards you, but just he ain't Voldemort. You wrote about how you felt after the election. What are your thoughts now, a year later? Are current events affecting your writing, and if so, how? Current events, including the complete disruption of my household, are definitely affecting my writing, but that's not related to Trump. This has been a tumultuous year for me in general, so it's impossible for me to sort out um, what is the effect of my entire life being disrupted on multiple levels, and what is the effect of general political malaise. So, what I am hoping is that once I'm settled into the new place, I won't be traveling as much next year. I've kind of reduced my traveling intentionally because my life has been tumultuous. Um, Hopefully, all of my relatives will remain healthy and all right. Hopefully, there will be minimal personal drama going on in my life, and then I will be able to settle into a space. We'll see. We'll see. Um, but yes, things are affecting my writing. Only in the sense of that it's difficult for me to slow down, and also the fact that I'm working on multiple projects at one time is not taking a toll. It just means that I'm doing things that I normally do in a much more slow fashion. So, like, working on my latest novel is going slower because I only work on it every other week because I've got another project that I'm working on, for example. So, I don't know that that actually answers your question. I try not to let Trump overshadow any aspect of my life. He is a horrible human being. He is taking the country down the toilet. The people who are facilitating that are whether they are the politicians who refuse to impeach him or the people who voted for him, the people who are facilitating that are equally deserving of scorn in my life. On the other hand, I live in New York. I'm relatively isolated from people like that, except on the internet. I yell at them a lot on the internet, and I yell and go to protests and things like that. I don't talk about that online just because it's nobody's business, but what I do. But I go and I try and do what I can. And I try to help people in individual ways if I can. I donate money to causes that I find meaningful. I think that's what we all have to do. At the end of the day, we all got to help each other and we all got to survive because some of these motherfuckers don't want that happening. So even that can be an act of defiance. That's all I got to tell you. I hope that's helpful. All right, let's see. Next question is from Caleb Russell. Oh, pardon me. Is from Caleb Russell. I'm sorry, this is the last question. Wow. Who asks, can you name a few of your favorite pieces of fan fiction or fan fiction writers? I can, but I won't. That's largely because I don't want those people receiving undue scrutiny. And many of my favorite fanfic writers are wonderful people who I've either made friends with or gotten to know. Just because that's me. When I like somebody's writing, I always reach out and write comments to them and say, I don't tell them necessarily who I am, but I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they're like, oh my God, someone said that was amazing. And then we talk. And I've made some good friends that way over my life. And so the thing I don't want to do is inadvertently direct a bunch of people toward this person's writing who will then say, well, N.K. Jemisin, the New York Times reviewer, Hugo winner, likes this person's writing. I don't like this person's writing. How, I don't want them getting any kind of schmutz or flack or hate because of me. Even though I would dearly love to direct additional people towards their work, I don't do so as me. I've mentioned to people before that I have more than one Tumblr. There's the official Tumblr, and then there's the Tumblr where I'm just like myself, Jane Schmo fan. And through that Tumblr, I often will list recommendations and things like that, where people don't know who the hell I am and will take it at face value and not add anything to it. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that you understand my refusal here. But these are people whose writing I really like, and people who personally I really respect. I don't want to do anything that might hurt them. All right, so that's it for the questions. And unfortunately, I have to get back to packing. So I will go ahead and try and put this online because today is the last day I'm even going to have internet before Verizon comes along and cuts it off. So we'll see what we can get done. Anyway, thanks for listening, and talk to you guys in a month. Bye.